Hello, my name is John Patrick Hanna, and I will be focusing my dialogue on Daniel Saldivar's proposal for a militarized education system and why it will be highly detrimental to our society. Since this is a policy debate, I seek to illuminate the flaws and inadequacies of the proposed policy in order to reject the proposed education reform. First and foremost, I would like to address and reject the idea of operating on an education system on discipline and militarized authority. Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines discipline as control that is gained by requiring that rules or orders be obeyed and punishing bad behavior. While my opponent does make rational arguments about discipline facilitating control of the mind and its experiences, it is a loaded word full of controversy and speculation. When combined with military, discipline takes an even more negative connotation, resembling control, submissiveness, and a lack of freedom. Already embedded into the language of such a system is a sense of hostility and containment, which is not conducive to a good learning environment. This idea behind public education is to enrich, enlighten, and empower the masses of the state, providing innovation and advancement in technology, promoting efficiency of the public, as well as enabling tolerance and awareness in society, thus perpetuating peace. How can students absorb the knowledge being taught in school when they are too emotionally frustrated by the hostility in a militarized school environment can produce? Another problem with this education reform is that it doesn't do much to solve core issues with the education. My opponent defines reform as change, but the solution fails to provide a change in the system. The K-12 system currently in place operates under a one-size-fits-all approach, with heavy standardization and testing. Under the militarized education system, kids would still be undergoing marginalization, standardization, and testing. Only the curriculum and the requirements would be much more rigorous. Standardized testing, while offering many benefits like setting a general bar of achievement, ignores the needs of the individual and submits them to generalization under a universal standard. World-renowned psychologist Howard Gardner theorized that intelligence differentiates into 8 different and specific modalities: visual, musical, linguistic, logical, bodily, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. Humans, having unique biochemical brain composition and socioeconomic upbringing, among other factors, also have unique ways of learning, specializing in one or more of these modalities of intelligence. For example, a linguistic learner finds themselves better acquainted with written and spoken word, and so they tend to excel in fields designed to their specialties, like, say, English or foreign language. One can see how this theory correlates directly to poor standardized test results by many individuals, as well as overall poor performance in the K-12 system, because the system treats individuals the same regardless of learning ability. To incorporate a military-style education system in replace of the current regime simply perpetuates the core problem and fails to provide real solutions. One may also question the ethics and disciplinary methods which militarized academies utilize, especially if the discipline causes serious physical or mental health problems. In the United States Marine Corps, the disciplinary education seeks to break the individual down and build them back up. Other military branches practice similar ideologies, like the U.S. Naval Academy's Plebe Summer, which puts incoming freshmen under heavy scrutiny in physically and mentally demanding jobs. Because this is a form of secondary education, and the students involved are of sound age to be considered an adult capable of making their own rational decisions, there's a little more leniency in this practice. However, should we incorporate similar education styles into primary education, where the kids aren't as big and aren't as rational, many kids would fall victim to the pressure and discipline because they simply don't hold the mental capacity to handle such hostility. Kids these days already battle the challenges that school has to offer, like bullying, self-consciousness, peer pressure, and isolation. Adding more to their plate of stress would only further damage their psyche and mental capacity, resulting in poor academic performance, and perhaps even more seriously, poor mental state of mind. As fragile beings, kids must be treated delicately, which is why it is a requirement for teachers to be knowledgeable in child development and child psychology, as it directly correlates to the performance in the classroom. Therefore, submitting these small children to rigorous disciplinary-based education would have terrible outcomes and thus should be rejected altogether. Lastly, my opponent fails to provide clear, concise, and articulated data as to how the military-style education system would operate, merely generalizing the entirety of the system into three components. It seems as though this entire argument is riddled with generalizations, severely lacking in detailed outlining. In fact, the reform proposal doesn't even directly address the criteria of the reform, simply noting that the system will be similar to the military education systems. But what is the system? What kind of criteria will the kids be learning? Will they be offered all fields of study, or will it be limited to just military disciplines? And where are the arts? Are we going to provide them? Will the children of our nation be subject to black and white material instead of an enriched, colorful, and creative education? This broad, vague, and ambiguous reform proposal leaves us in a state of confusion and unsolid ground, enabling a multitude of questions, but providing little answers. If you're going to change the status quo, it's best to have a blueprint. In conclusion, a military-style education system would have very little benefits and ultimately prove highly detrimental to the fabric of our society. Generalizations infest the reform proposal both in practice and in theory, failing to acknowledge the importance of concentrated, individualized education, and failing to provide detailed description of the practice of the system. In essence, this reform would not necessarily change the system of primary education, it would simply put it under a different title. Thanks.